Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. So this video is about Venus, and I really want to go more in depth into what it can represent, because Venus can seem like a sort of shallow topic, a surface level sort of thing, but it's definitely not shallow. What it represents can be deeply personal and significant. So we're just going to do a little exploration of that. And I probably will at some point do a Venus in the Signs series, since I do have a Planets in the Houses series from a while ago. And I also offer personal natal chart readings if you're interested in that, and also synastry readings, so information in the description. But let's get into Venus. Venus rules two signs, Taurus and Libra, and these are two different sides of it, different facets of Venus. But that idea of balance and having the two signs that it rules, just kind of interesting. So what does Venus represent within our charts? Of course, there's the standard love, beauty, attraction, romance. Venus is the way that we attract our values, what we consider to be valuable, whether that's on a material level or more of a conceptual level. It's about what we value, whether that's outside or within ourselves. Venus can be how we attract things to us, but it's also what we're attracted to. And this can also play out in the idea of like traditional societal standard ideas of beauty, or your own more personal, unconventional version of it. The way that your personal Venus in its sign and in its house and all of the aspects to it plays out is going to be super unique to you. And I think it's really important to validate your own version of Venus and beauty and value ultimately. So really looking at your own, I feel like it can help us see like, okay, this is what I value. This is what I consider to be beautiful or attractive or important within a union, or even important to your surroundings. Looking at what you find beautiful, not just outside, but within yourself. Those things about you, your traits that are representative of Venus within you, that can help when we get kind of tripped up about like, are we society's idea of attractive? Are we meeting the standards? Try to meet your own standards instead of that, because it's ridiculous, these standards that we are holding ourselves to nowadays. And one little thing to consider is that Venus can only be 47 degrees away from your sun sign. So your Venus and anyone else's Venus, you can guess it. You're gonna know that it's either in their sun sign or one of the two surrounding signs on either side. So someone's Venus is never going to be in like the opposite sign of their sun. There is an element of guessing that can be done. So Venus is relevant in our relationships, in our desire for connection, because this planet does represent the feelings that we all have of sort of like gravitating towards others and wanting to be accepted or form a union or create harmony within society, fitting in or standing out. So it can absolutely represent our priorities within a relationship, or our priorities when it comes to more of our desires or the things that we surround ourselves with. So I'm gonna start by breaking it into the Taurus side and the Libra side and describing those sides a bit more. They both feed into what is Venus, but starting with Taurus, this is the more physical side, the sensual, enjoyment-focused side of Venus. This can be what makes you feel secure, what makes you feel valuable, and a sense of self-worth. And it represents our need or desire, whatever it is for you, for physical union or physical enjoyment. The senses are very relevant in our experience of Venus, whether this is what we like to see, what we like to touch, what we like to consume, the way that we treat our body, and the way that we feel physically comfortable. People with a lot of Taurus energy tend to be more drawn towards like high quality, soft fabrics, things like that, things that are representative of luxury, quality, and value in the way of recognizing that the more effort that goes into something, the better quality you get out of it typically. So even when this just comes to material things, you can look at the element that your Venus is in and kind of understand your priorities in this way. This idea of the more physical side of enjoying life, being in a body, and the ways that we can experience life through this vessel. The Libra side of Venus is more about the romantic and also aesthetic, symmetrical side of Venus, where it's more about that equality, the two sides, the harmony, the idea of getting along with another person, focusing on the relationship, and also focusing on things being nice for everyone. So that's where the aesthetic sense of like, does this look nice? Is this pleasing to the eye? Or the actual connection, does it feel nice to be around this person? Am I making them happy? Are they making me happy? Whether it's romantic or any significant relationships in our lives, you can consider this to be the more externally focused side of Venus, while Taurus is more internally, personally focused. This is Venus through like the introverted and the extroverted side. And it's interesting, this side of Venus can even be concerned with the very aesthetic of the connection, with how the relationship looks, how it comes across. And then taking out the idea of another person entirely, it's about your social side, the way that you come across socially or are received by other people. So I see this as being more about our beauty in the way that we present ourselves and the way that we attract or try to draw people or things towards us. And both Taurus and Libra are very artistic, beauty-focused signs. This idea of aesthetic, it's relevant to all sides of it. So now I'm just going to go back to talking about Venus as a whole. I just wanted to cover the different ways that Taurus and Libra represent Venus energy, not just through the signs, but also through the 2nd and the 7th houses. So I always see the most authentic expression of ourselves as being, you know, the most attractive, the most well received. It's going to be better received when you're actually being yourself. So truly embodying your Venus while taking into account any significant aspects that you have. We are all a very complex combination of our own energies, but the more you can really get in touch with your specific Venus and what it represents within your chart, the more I think we can attract to us what is for us. And you know, sometimes people are not attracted to our representation of Venus. And I also see that as a sign of like, that's just not for us. That's not representative of what we're looking for. That doesn't align with our values. So there's really no need to try to attract things that aren't for you and that aren't aligning with you. But that can be very difficult. It can be hard in this world to accept that we're not meant to be attractive to every single person, but we're not. And that's where our tastes and preferences and our priorities come in. Because this also has a lot to do with self-worth and how we feel about ourselves. And I think that when we are embodying our Venus traits, then we can actually feel better about ourselves because we're embodying our values. It's like, just because somebody expects you to be a certain way doesn't mean that you're meant to be that way. But if you can look at your Venus in the sign and house, that shows you your specific values, the way that you attract through the sign by embodying that sign's traits. And then the house that it's in shows the area of life that is your strongest priority. For example, my Venus is in Cancer and it's in the 3rd house. And I find that I feel most myself when I am embodying those Cancer traits when I'm in my Venus. I love to nurture, I like taking care of people with my Cancer, and then Venus in the 3rd house, I need those conversations. I need to be able to connect with someone intellectually and also to be able to express and communicate that emotional side. So it's simple enough to recognize your Venus sign and house and what that shows about you. But the aspects to Venus can absolutely complicate things because positive free-flowing aspects that you have between your Venus and other planets within your chart can show real talents and skills when it comes to attracting parts of you that are working nicely together. But hard aspects can actually be quite difficult because this can be affecting your sense of self-worth. And when our values that make us feel good about ourselves are at odds with other personal parts of us, it can feel very disjointed. Personal example again, my Venus is opposite my moon. So Venus is actually kind of a tough spot for me. Venus is something that I really have to look into and like try to understand. This essence of Venus does not come naturally. If you struggle with Venus, I understand how difficult that can be. So let's look at the darker side of Venus. Of course, this does kind of call for balance, and we can become imbalanced because the dark side of Venus can be so deeply painful, since this does have to do with our self-worth and values. But also the way that our priorities work in this area, we can have expectations of things, especially looking at the house that you have Venus in. This can be an expectation for peace, harmony, balance in this area of life. And if the external world isn't meeting you in that way, it can be deeply frustrating. It can be disappointing or upsetting. Like, say, for example, you have Venus in the 4th house and your home or your living situation is anything but harmonious. Say you have unpleasant roommates, or you're living in a place that's just ugly to you. That can be really painful, and that can cause you to act out in ways that might be unconscious. You could feel this unsettling feeling but not fully understand why, because Venus does represent a need for peace and harmony wherever it is in your chart. And sometimes we have to do our best to create that for ourselves, but it doesn't mean that that area of life is always going to be harmonious. And then looking at Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, who is very associated with Venus energy, she didn't always do good things. She could be very manipulative, seductive, using the idea of beauty and attraction in a way that isn't for the highest good. Sometimes our desires in general can push us to do things that aren't best for ourselves, aren't best for the people around us. This can be a highly competitive energy as well, because Venus shows like where we're proud of ourselves, what we value about ourselves and think is beautiful within us, think is acceptable even. So if you feel like there's competition, if you feel like somebody is doing your Venus values better than you are, that can be triggering, that can be upsetting. But we can always take this as motivation to improve. Venus can also represent that area of life where we are motivated to improve our situation, whatever it is. Attraction has driven people to do absolutely abhorrent things. So don't think that this is all set up to be pleasant and happy just because it's a benefic planet. But I do ultimately see that strong drive towards peace and harmony and love and beauty to be a very strong motivating factor. Venus wants things to be nice for yourself, for everybody. Venus just wants things to work nicely. It wants things to work out. So utilizing that as best you can and creating the best possible situation that you can for yourself can help a lot. And then looking at the more aesthetic side of Venus. Venus represents our aesthetic, the way that we want to come across in sort of our essence. And many things can play into this, but I do find that matching your Venus essence to some degree can help you feel even more harmonious within yourself. Because again, like, think of any standards or expectations that are put on you by people outside of you. Are they expecting you to be what they want, or are they expecting you to be, the best version of yourself? So really leaning into what is Venus for you? What do you want to embody in your presentation? What do you want to come across when people see you? Whether that's totally visual or more about your energy, the traits that you're putting forward. Really getting in that Venus energy, it can help you feel more like yourself. So ultimately, what Venus comes down to, I think, is just to really embody that in a way that makes you feel like yourself and feel like you are being those traits that you value so much. And recognizing when there might be an imbalance as far as maybe we're looking at things in a biased way and injecting too much of our preferences into it, or maybe we're in a situation that isn't right for us. Venus is very much about the choices that we make, whether they are material, literal, physical choices in clothing, in the way that we decorate our surroundings or ourselves, and then the types of connections that we choose to be in or we choose to keep in our life. The sorts of energy that we surround ourselves with to please your Venus can just lead to overall a stronger sense of peace and happiness and worth within yourself. But I think individual Venus placements can say so much more than an overview video about it. So definitely look into your specific Venus and recognize all of those things that are especially significant to your enjoyment of life, of being a person and being with other people. Those with really strong Venus influence can be incredibly artistic, very creative, or have really good judgment when it comes to not just what is beautiful, but what is going to work for people on a larger scale. Or in more non-conforming energies, what do you personally find beautiful that other people don't or might neglect or might not see? It's all about that. It's all about what you have to offer specifically, whether your taste aligns with many or very few. That uniqueness is what's so important here. So hope that this is helpful. Feel free to share your experience with me. And also, thank you for your patience if you're watching this far. I'm trying to post videos more often and things just keep getting in the way, like this shift of Pluto into Aquarius. This kind of messed me up a little bit. I had to deal with a lot of things within myself that were actually incredibly relevant to Venus. So now that I've worked through that, I feel like I'm in a better place. Also out of Scorpio season. I don't do the best during Scorpio season. It puts me in a weird energy. But I'm really gonna try to do better to put out videos a lot faster. I truly intend to. But I operate as a very intuitive being and can't necessarily follow schedules in the way that I want to. But whatever. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Bye.